Drivers who switch and save with Progressive save over $700 on average, and those savings add up. Imagine what you could buy in the future.
Hey, remember how 20 years ago I switched to Progressive? Well, now it's the future, and I used all those savings to buy this new hologram phone. Because, it's the future, and everything is holograms now.
So switch to Progressive and save big, because those savings can add up in the future. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. National annual average insurance savings by new customer surveyed who saved with Progressive in 2020. Potential savings will vary.
Stand by. The vacuum tubes are warming up. This is a special live broadcast right here on Georgia Radio.
Well, good evening, everybody. This is Wade Peebles here with Matt Jolly on GeorgiaRadio.com.
Evening.
A great institution. You're listening to yes, a fine old Southern institution.
We should all be institutionalized, maybe.
Yes, GeorgiaRadio.com, a great, fine old Southern institution for a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we're
something like that.
Something like for a long, long time, y'all. We've been here, and we're going to be here a long, long time to come. But anyway, you're listening to the Georgia Folk and Farm Life radio show, and which was it brought to you by Meeks Brothers Cattle Company. Talking about a great Southern institution. Now, that is a great Southern institution.
Just some fantastic meat, and
wonderful. And,
I'll tell you what, if you get it now's the time to get it, because they're taking orders for the fall. And they got those calves out there, and the big ones, they're ready to fatten them up. What on earth did you just do? Well, I've got a camera here.
I threw a duck for Conway to go get because he was chewing on my hand.
That's the one you picked up?
Not a real duck. It's a stuffed duck.
Oh. Well, what happened to the one you picked up at the Hunan Palace earlier today? Did you already eat that one?
Ate that.
Yeah, okay. All right. Yeah. That was terrible. Who do you have on the show today, by the way?
Well, listen, we have... it seems like every show we said, this is going to be great because I've been wanting to get this young man right here is one of the most impressive, and he's listening, and I'm talking about him, and his face is turning red even now because he's not boisterous or boastful, but this young man has impressed me for a long time, and just his mind and what he's interested in and what he does and what he's accomplished at such a young age is Chris Adams, sometimes known as the Turtle Man. On Facebook is CB Adams now, and Chris Adams of West Green, originally from West Green, Georgia. Hey, Chris.
How y'all doing this evening?
Yeah,
we are fine. Now, you have a great deal of interest in pioneering cracker country, North Florida, South Georgia, the era that this part of our region was settled and developed. You have a great love for the Okefenokee Swamp, for nature, our trees, our flora, our fauna, our history. And you are working to preserve some of those plants and some of those critters that have almost faded away. So you have been done many things, and so I want you to tell us kind of a brief overview of your work history, your accomplishments that you're most proud of, and what you're doing now. So I'm going to give it to you. I'll interrupt you. Don't think I won't.
Please do.
When I think of something, when it hits my old brain, and I just have to come out with it. But talk to us, Chris. Tell us about Chris Adams.
Tell us about the Wiregrass and what is it called again? The Wiregrass
Ecological and Cultural Project. Wiregrass Ecological and Cultural Project.
Yeah,
I love Wiregrass.
That's pretty much what my whole existence has been about. Is if I had to sum it up in few words, the Wiregrass ways. My family's been down here in this part of Georgia for a little over 200 years off the Satilla River. We live there, not quite on the upper Satilla, but right around the middle section, over near the community of Satilla near Douglas, Georgia. And, growing up, my upbringing was a little bit different than most folks my age, which I'm only 25, which young by some standards, but I tell you, some days I feel older than myself. Half the time I don't even know how old I am. But I have spent my life trying to understand my forebears, where I came from, And to really understand who you are, you got to understand where you come from. And something else that kind of goes hand in hand with that is when you talk about the land, you can't talk about the land without talking about the people that live there. And you can't talk about the people that live there without talking about the land. And my passion for natural resources, for what we have here, and for the cultural identity of my people, you know, I think it shows in my work. At least I hope it shows. And what I've been doing as of late is trying to cultivate some of the old crop plants that most folks have never heard of. One in particular, which we've spoken on before, called gopher rice. And this year, it was kind of a milestone for me because putting it in the ground, I didn't know what was going to happen. You know, that farmer has to be one of the biggest optimists out there, because when they put that seed in the ground, Mother Nature is against them sometimes. Sometimes she'll help. But it's mainly just praying and hoping that seed comes up.
And Chris, let's rewind here real quick. You were able to get a few of these gopher rice seeds from one of these seed stores that we always hear about. And I don't mean like a retail story, but like a seed bank, I guess is a better way to put it.
Seed bank, yeah. So I went on this wild goose chase when I found out about it. My buddy Andrew, he gets red in the face when I say the reason I'm doing this is because of him, but it really is. My buddy Andrew Bellicomo, and he won't mind me telling his name out there, he is just as passionate about some of the things that I am. And we were deep in conversation one day, and we got to talking about upland rice that was grown here in the Wiregrass South. And when folks think rice, they think low country. But there was a type of hill rice, an upland rice that was widely cultivated here, mostly by a lot of your lower class, middle class people. And one of these strains was called gopher rice. And another name for it's Guinea rice. That traces it back to its origins in Africa. It probably came to the South through the Caribbean, and by the 1870s, it was being grown here. Well, it was grown continually until about World War I. Then that market fell out, and, you know, rice was pretty much non-existent. So when I found out about gopher rice, I went tracking down Facebook posts. I contacted David Shields, who has written quite a few books and articles on Old South foodways and culture. And it led me to talking with Sarah Ross, who's with the University of Georgia and the Wormslow Institute near Savannah. She obliged in kindly giving me some of the seed, and this brings us to the present, putting it in the ground, growing it, and now we're getting seed heads. We've not harvested it yet, and it's only a small patch. But that small patch makes the first time in at least a century and a quarter that it has been grown here. So, big milestone for me this year, and I'm quite proud of that success. Chris,
it's funny that, you know, you mentioned the upland rice, and most people are unaware. There's many things like most people didn't realize how many sheep used to be raised around here, and people, you know, use bull and all. But the rice wasn't brought from the, you know, Louisiana or even overseas. And there was a lot of rice grown. And I just this week, Faith Stapleton Burnett is a great friend of mine. And she ferrets out these old newspaper articles about Georgia from the 1800s. And she sent me one, and I'm going to forward it to you. It was about, it was published in the late 1800s. And a young Ohio farmer had saved some money, wanted to leave for warmer climes and move to Georgia to buy a farm. And he had written this editor of the paper asking him about the farming conditions in Georgia, the outlook. And that editor gathered up some people in Georgia over the, say, 10 or 20 years that had grown great crops to show examples. And one of them was rice, and I think it was in Greene County. I'm not sure. And there was a farmer had grown 119 bushels of Indian corn in Georgia. And this was in the 1800s. I didn't realize people grew over 100 bushels, to the acre until I was, back. I figured it was just in recent decades. But anyway, I'll send that to you. But I thought about about you when I saw that. And I said, we ordinarily don't even think of rice. We think of rice grown down, in Chatham and the coastal counties, but not up here.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it was widely cultivated, and there were many different strains of it, too. I guess the whole gopher rice thing appealed to me. It kind of, in my mind, I equated gopher with sandy, our gopher tortoise.
Right. Tortoise,
and
right.
What's good about this rice is that it was typically grown utilizing nothing but average rainfall. There was no way to irrigate this. It was grown like corn was back then. You hope that you got good rain.
Wow.
I've got a question on this
with a cradle, I would imagine, by hand, right?
Yeah, they harvested it by hand. From what few accounts that I have read around the Okefenokee region, there were usually rice cutters. They had a specific guy in a village or hamlet somewhere who was good at it, and that's who came around and harvested it.
Chris, what's the nutritional value of this stuff? Do we know? I mean, is it a white rice or is it a darker rice, or what do we know about it?
It's a darker rice. I mean, I haven't shelled it yet. I mean, we'll learn more about it firsthand when I get to harvesting it. And to do that, I have to wait for most of the plants, about 80-85% of them, to start turning straw yellow. And when they turn to straw consistency, that's when I can start cutting them down, and we can really start harvesting some of those seed heads and then get the hucks off.
Yeah, I'm really interested in this because, where our place is up near Carrollton, I would love to be able to grow something like that. And I just know, from a food source, the darker the rice, the more fiber that's in it, and the better it is for you. It's not just a filler food. I was curious about that because it must have been healthy for those folks to eat back then.
I would say, Chris and Matt, you know yourself, Chris, that most of the crops grown today bear little resemblance to the crops grown 100 120 years ago in that area you're speaking of. They weren't hybrids. You didn't have the modern dent corns. You didn't have. So I can see that, and the nutrition value and flavor was much greater. They weren't as large and showy, but now I want to move on to the other thing, Chris. Hogs and cows. You have a great interest in what we always call old scrub cows, and you've got some. Tell us about your hogs you've got now.
So right now I'm raising Ossabaw hogs, and
Ossabaw hogs. Yeah.
There is some dispute about the validity of the purity of these hogs on Ossabaw Island, but I think the individuals that were taken off the island back in the 80s, DNA testing was done, and they match or nearly match the swine that were originally brought by Spanish missionaries and some of the conquistadors to the New World. And they're not directly Spanish pigs. They actually were taken from the Canary Islands. So by original origin, they came from Spain, but these
Spain ruled the Canary Islands, so it was basically colonial Spain, right?
Basically colonial Spanish, yeah. And that's what most of these livestock in the southeast are in themselves, are colonial Spanish livestock. But these Ossabaws, Georgia has a law you can't transport live feral hogs. Technically, the hogs on Ossabaw Island are feral and considered such. Back in the 80s, though, I believe it was the University of Missouri, if I'm not mistaken, that got some of the individuals off the island under permit, and they started doing some testing and breeding on them. And then they ended up in places like George Washington's home place, Mount Vernon, at these living history museums. So I was fortunate to get a couple of these out of University, Georgia. The lady over there raises them. And that's my goal right now, is keep raising the original piney wood rooter hogs. Root hog or die.
That's right. Oh, and somebody a while back said I didn't understand that hogs root for food, and if they didn't feed the hogs back then. It was root hog or die. In other words, that hog had to go out and find something to eat, or he'd die, because they sure wasn't feeding him much. They would feed them enough to keep them coming home on a regular basis. But hogs ran free. Cows did too. Now talk about the. Wait a minute. We need to do a break. We're halfway through the show, aren't we, Matt?
I'm just enamored. I'm still thinking about this rice. Let's do one.
Yeah, Chris, we'll come back in just a minute. We're going to do the mid-show break a little late right now.
Here we go.
Hi, this is Wade Peebles from Georgia Folk and Farm Life Radio. I'm here to tell you about Meeks Brothers Cattle Company. And you don't have to worry about supply chain issues or where your beef comes from. Do what I do and call Meeks Brothers Cattle Company today. You can get a whole, half, a quarter, any amount of beef you want. Good quality beef, vacuum packed, lasts up to 3 years in your freezer. It's grass-fed, grain-finished, made to order. Visit Meeks Brothers Cattle Company on Facebook today and tell them Brother Wade sent you. And that's Meeks Brothers Cattle Company. Thank you.
Drivers who switch and save with Progressive save over $700 on average, and those savings add up. Imagine what you could buy in the future.
Hey, remember how 20 years ago I switched to Progressive? Well, now it's the future, and I used all those savings to buy this new hologram phone. Because, it's the future, and everything is holograms now.
So switch to Progressive and save big, because those savings can add up in the future. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. National annual average insurance savings by new customers surveyed who saved with Progressive in 2020. Potential savings will vary.
All the best country.
Georgia Radio. Everywhere you go.
Okay, you back with us here on Georgia Folk and Farm Life Radio here on GeorgiaRadio.com, brought to you by Meeks Brothers Cattle Company. And tonight on the show, I'm so happy to have Chris Adams on. And Chris is just a font of information and a renaissance man. He does reenactments. He knows history. He knows plants and animals, and it just absorbs our culture from pioneering times on up to recent time. But he has a great love for the old things and the old ways. And for a young man, I tell you what, by the time he's old, I don't know if it can contain all of what he's going to experience and his knowledge. I hope. Well,
and he's well adjusted too.
He is.
He's not living in his mother's basement doing all this stuff. Chris has a young lady that I think he's pretty smitten with too. Which speaks a lot about him.
Yeah, and I bet you she has to. If she's gonna be Chris's woman or whatever we want to, we're terming and giving you your classifications, Chris, without your permission. But we're gonna just jump right in and do it. But I bet you she has to have a love for the things you have a love for in order to stay right there with you.
She puts up with a good bit of my troublemaking, I reckon.
Well, I think it's great, and I'm so happy to have your acquaintance here, because it really is excellent work that you're doing, and it's work that we all need to be interested in.
Well, Chris, you kind of go through, I won't say phases, but which is a must. If you're going to do what you do, you have to take it in steps and phases. And for a while, you have to concentrate on this and then move on to something else. And then all of it gets brought in, incorporated into what you are and what you do. But the old scrub cows, the old cracker cattle, talk to us about those. I know you've had a great fascination with those cattle for a long time.
I think I was probably about 14 or 15 when I really started getting into heritage breeds and trying to assemble a collection, if you will, of these original livestock that my ancestors would have had and would have seen on a daily basis. I think my interest in living history and reenactment, we do that to try and get a glimpse of what the past was like, to experience it to an extent, and to share that with others. So by raising heritage breeds, that encompasses all these things for me. And I had the privilege last year of working on a place over in West Georgia where a family raises some of the last remaining piney woods cattle from Georgia, the last bloodline from Georgia. And these bloodlines exist because individuals 100 years ago, 50 years ago, saw the need to preserve these things as improved, in quotations, cattle were coming onto the market, these Angus and Bremer cattle and Herefords. But they saw the need to keep these old herds to pass them on. And the Holt line of cattle is that very thing for the state of Georgia. These cattle are the last remnant of the old woods cows. And when I say woods cows, I mean, if you had a time machine and went back literally a century ago, anywhere in South Georgia, you would have seen them. And they would have been called rape straws, piney woods, woods cows, scrub cows, yellerhammers. They had all different names for them. But I've also talked with some of the last individuals, I guess, who have witnessed the last of the woods cows or the swamp cows on the Okmulgee and the Oconee rivers and the Satilla River and Okefenokee. So it's a real privilege for me to get to work with these animals hands-on, days at a time, and that gave me some more knowledge. And one day I hope to have a herd of my own, but at the moment I'm focusing really on the little things, what I can do in between my work, my studies. So that's what's led me to Spanish goats and Gulf Coast sheep and Ossabaw hogs and all the poultry I'm getting into.
Where do you do this at, Chris?
Basically located out of West Ring.
Yeah.
Now, I'm like a pinball machine all over South Georgia. Y'all can tell from my Facebook post. But my home turf is West Ring, Georgia. And
you have some land down there that you could experiment on.
Me and my grandfather, we kind of tag team on this stuff. When I'm away, he helps take care of it. And then, of course, when I'm home, I kind of play my part in it. But my grandfather has been really the biggest influence and the biggest asset, a valuable asset in my life, because had it not been for him very early on, I don't think I would have taken up the torch like I have.
Well, Chris, that's admirable. You're talking about the cow. I can remember when I was a boy and I spent my summers down on the Ocklawaha River in Marion County, Florida, with my kinfolks down there. They were still working the old scrub cows, and they had Brahmers too. In fact, they would have them, by then we're mingling and mixing them, and. But I remember still my great uncles and cousins working the cows on horseback on the river swamp down in there, the way they used to, and that's all gone now. And Chris, if I had, I wish we could start it would take a lot of money, but I wish I could be a part of maybe starting a way to raise funding from various sources to get you a homestead where you had a dog trot house, maybe you built yourself and built your outbuilding, your barns, and you had your few cows and your hogs and your chickens and your crops, crops growing, and a demonstration place. And I don't mean something phony and fake. I mean something real that you could almost live on. Now, you wouldn't want to literally live there, and they don't think you could live with an open well in an outhouse nowadays. But have all that nearby, close by, where you could live it and show it, demonstrate it. That would be great, wouldn't it?
Well, see, that's my end goal right there. If I had to pick an end goal, that is it. I want something the equivalent of a Foxfire Learning Center, but in South Georgia. And that's really what prompted the whole Wiregrass project of mine.
Well, Chris, why don't we work together and there's money out there. There's people that.
Well, what about that home that's right there in the woods behind your house? I mean, there's a whole city park over there. Yeah. I mean, there's all kind of stuff over there they could use.
Well, let's work. It ain't gonna happen in a day. We're on what built in a day, as they say, Chris. But there are a coalition. I think there's some people that would get behind somebody like you. I don't mean somebody. I mean get behind you. Let me phrase that way. We get behind you and your work, and help fund it. And I say in the next few years, let's work towards that. Let's do that. And there are institutions. There's money to be had. And I know you would take grant money, but not something with strings attached. I would want to see you do this your way when nobody over your shoulder telling you how to do it. But I'd love to be a part of trying to get that established, so you don't have to go here and there. You can stay right there and live your dream.
You need an education foundation.
That's a dang good dream right there, Chris.
Sure,
it's a dang good one.
I have one question about these pigs, because I know Wade's going to ask it. Do you fork these pigs regularly, Chris? Are they pigs that enjoy a good back rub?
Chris might not know. They do enjoy a good treat every now and again. They get all the slop from the house, so they eat better than most pigs do.
Uh-huh.
But they're not quite keen on the whole belly rubs and ear scratches. It's more of I enjoy watching them and keeping them around just for sake of it.
We had Dawn Baker on, the piglet rescue lady, and she threw that out at us about forking the pigs, and what she and her husband take a fork and scratch their bellies, and I lost it. That's the funniest thing I ever heard. Pig forking.
Pig forking. I've never seen Wade laugh so hard. That was the funniest thing.
My face was red, and boy, did we laugh about that. So,
she said, that's the only time you're going to get a fork near one of my pigs.
Only on this radio station would you hear about forking pigs and throwing ducks, all in the same conversation.
And gopher rice, too. I mean,
and gopher rice.
That's great.
Oh, that reminds me, that sounded like gopher rides. And did you know, Matt, that people used to put little children on the backs of big gophers, tortoises, and let them ride on the back of gophers?
Well, that doesn't
My mama rode a gopher when she was a little girl. Chris, you're familiar with that, aren't you? You've heard many old people talk about when they were little, they rode on the back of a gopher.
There's a picture that comes to mind that Francis Harper took in the Okefenokee back in the 20s or 30s. It was a little girl on the back of a gopher tortoise standing upright.
I hadn't seen that, but I'll Google it. Yeah.
I'll send it your way.
Thank you very much.
That's been great having you on, Chris. And
it has.
Just a lot of fun. I cannot wait to see that gopher rice. I wonder if it would grow up there in Carrollton on our place.
I'm sure it will. If it grows down here with my minimal effort of other than trying to water it and keep it alive, it will grow anywhere.
Oh, Chris, we're almost out of time, but I have to mention, y'all, I called Chris. I thought I had rediscovered the Franklinia flowering shrub plant down in the swamp today, and I was excited, and then I sent it to Chris, but we still haven't figured out exactly what it is, but, it's this
what is it called?
That was called Franklinia. There was Eliada, Gordonia, Latimer, Franklin. There were several plants that, like Bartram and others, discovered in the 1700s that most have gone extinct in the wild, and yet you can still buy them because they were taken and placed in nurseries, and they're landscaping plants now, but they were extinct in the wild. And I just, was sure. I ran up on a little
patch of, what is it called again?
Franklinia.
Wade found the last Franklin tree in all of the Omaha region today. That's what he did.
And we're going to call it that. But I think it's probably, it's something pretty mundane, Matt, and common, and dang it.
Yeah,
it was exciting. It was ragweed.
Ragweed.
It was fun while it lasted. That's why you got to have friends like Chris. That they bust your bubble, but they do it so kindly, and I appreciate it.
Yeah, I'd be lost out there without Google Lens. Did you ever use that, Chris, or is that cheating? You probably don't even have a phone. You're out there with a.
For me, it's cheating. Half the time my phone stays in the truck when I go in the river swamp.
Yeah, well, that's because you're the real deal.
Well, I remember before, the internet, when we had the Audubon Field Guide to Trees and wildflowers and birds and fishes and things. But, I'm
about half convinced everything I touch is going to be poison ivy. So I'm always looking. See that little thing sticking up.
This will turn that. This one I found today, probably I'll be broke out all over tomorrow, Chris, thank you. We'll have you on again. We always say that to certain people, and we will have you on again. And let's try to work towards eventually you getting where you can do what you
have him on again. Chris needs his own show.
Yes,
he needs his own show with his education foundation.
Yep. That Ecological Wiregrass project, Wiregrass Ecological Project.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thanks, Chris.
It's been a pleasure, y'all.
Thanks, man. All right. Thank y'all for joining us tonight. And thanks, Chris. Thanks, Matt. Thanks for everybody that listens. Thanks for all the members of Georgia Folk and Farm Life Facebook. Thanks, Meeks Brothers Cattle Company. God bless y'all. And we'll see you on Facebook and hear you on the radio.
Yeah. Send us your jokes. Send us your jokes through the app.
Yeah.
Push the microphone button at the bottom of the app and record a joke.
Mash the button. Yes, you're in Georgia. The Yankees push buttons. Georgians mash them.
Well, you send us a joke and we'll close out the show, and the winner gets something fun. We don't know what yet.
Yeah.
But
autograph picture of Conway.
There you go. All right. Good night, Brother Wade.
Good night.
country.
Georgia Radio.
Drivers who switch and save with Progressive save over $700 on average, and those savings add up. Imagine what you could buy in the future.
Hey, remember how 20 years ago I switched to Progressive? Well, now it's the future, and I used all those savings to buy this new hologram phone. Because, it's the future, and everything is holograms now.
So switch to Progressive and save big, because those savings can add up in the future. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. National annual average insurance savings by new customers surveyed who saved with Progressive in 2020. Potential savings will vary.